Hello, hello. Hope you can join. We're going live. Hello, Seth Galina. Hello.
Hello, hi.
Hey. All right, we have some people signing on. We are
Wonderful.
about to join. Oh, I see her here. Hi, guys. Thanks for hopping. We're
Hi,
ready
everybody.
in just a sec.
How are you guys doing?
Hi, is that Yifat?
Yes, hi.
All right.
Sorry,
So,
I'm in the middle of traveling, so I'm in my car.
oh, okay. All right. Well, and Rachel, you're with us?
Yes, I am here. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's get started. And I know some people are going to just trickle on as well. So, welcome. I'm Ilana Frank, and I'm the CEO and founder of Jewish Fertility Foundation. We are here today with two important ladies from New York, Rachel and Yifat. We'll talk about them in just a sec. Before we do that, I'd like to speak about Jewish Fertility Foundation. Many of you know who we are, but we are a 6-year-old community-based organization that offers support in 3 ways. We also offer financial assistance by way of fertility grants, $1,000 to $15,000, interest-free loans, and clinic discounts, fertility clinic discounts. Additionally, we understand the strain, the emotional strain that fertility takes on a person, on a couple, and we offer emotional support services through traditional support groups, as well as a Fertility Buddies peer-to-peer mentorship program. And lastly, we offer educational trainings to community leadership like rabbis, like fertility clinic doctors and administrative staff, and to you all. So today we are going to be, sorry, just working out some logistics. All right. All right. So today we're going to be joined by Yifat and Rachel. They're introduce themselves to you. Hello, Yifat and Rachel. Instagram is offering an amazing new service where you can have more than one person on your Instagram feed. So this is the first time we're doing it, and you guys did it and you rocked it. So thank you. So before we turn it over to asking you all, professionals in the field, a few questions about what you do and why you do it. I would like to say, as an organization, for those of you who don't know, we're expanding and we're growing our business. We're bringing our services potentially to a community near you soon. We have 5 communities that are currently raising buy-in funds in order to be able to literally set up shop, set up an office. Right now, we're in Atlanta and Cincinnati, and we'll be in 2 more locations by the end of this year. So if this is something that is interesting to you, reach out to me, Ilana Frank, CEO of Jewish Fertility Foundation. All right, so now enough of me. We're going to get to the folks who are really the reason we're here today, Rachel and Yifat. So Rachel, why don't you first introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and your background and what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. So thank you so much, Ilana, for hosting this and for giving us the opportunity to speak to you all about surrogacy. I think JFF's mission is incredible, and I'm so excited that you are expanding. I think that that's a wonderful gift to the Jewish community in general. So I'm Rachel Wexler. I work at Trackman Law Center. And am an assisted reproductive technology attorney. I'm licensed in both New York and New Jersey. And so my days are really focused on working with intended parents, gestational carriers, donors, anyone really involved in a reproductive technology process who is needing a contract. And so I do a lot of contract writing. So these are donation contracts, surrogacy contracts, and then working with families to protect their parental rights in court.
Awesome. And we're going to start asking you some questions about your expertise in just a second, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, thank you so much, Ilana, and I'm so excited to be here with both of you today, and hello to everyone watching. So I'm also a surrogacy attorney. I work in Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey, and we also have a surrogacy agency. We work with surrogates of all religions and all backgrounds, and we also specialize in Jewish surrogacy as well. And we basically work with intended parents, surrogates, egg donors, sperm donors sometimes as well. And we take everything we work with the parents from the very, very first time they come to us, sometimes not even knowing where to begin, our baby home. And it's quite amazing to be part of those types of journeys. And what brought me to this area of the world is the fact that I myself went through infertility, and I know what it's like to have to go through that. And it's just my passion now to help others have babies as well. So thank you for all your work as well.
Of course. All right, so let's start with a question for Rachel.
Okay.
But is surrogacy legal?
So that is the big question, and the sort of annoying answer is that it depends. It depends on where you live. So surrogacy is a question that depends entirely on state law. So in the U.S., you have some states like California, New Jersey, D.C., which is not a state but a jurisdiction. Places like Nevada, Washington, that have laws on the books that expressly legalize and protect surrogacy in statewide statutes. So that is sort of the most protective you're going to get on the spectrum. Then there are some other states like New Mexico, Ohio, Pennsylvania, but maybe Yifat can talk a little bit more about that since she's actually barred there. And in those states, it's there are few laws about surrogacy. That doesn't mean that surrogacy is not completely safe and practiced in those states. It just means that there are no laws preventing it from happening. And, you know, the other thing that's important to know is that in states like that, because there is no law that really kind of centralizes how this process works. The process to secure parental rights in court, you know, is not established by statute, and so it could work differently in different courthouses, in different different counties. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. There are also a few states that outlaw surrogacy entirely. So Michigan is the big one. You know, up until a few months ago, it used to be New York. Now New York no longer you know, ban surrogacy. New York changed their law in February, so gestational surrogacy is now legalized and protected in New York, and that's a very big deal for New York families. You know, their laws really run the gamut. You know, there's a law in Louisiana about surrogacy where they strictly ban paid surrogacy, and they limit their uncompensated arrangements to heterosexual couples. So there is also that bit of discrimination, unfortunately, that happens in some places against same-sex couples. So you know, it's really important to you yourself maybe do some research, and also just to have a good sense of what the law is where you live.
Interesting. And then how will intended parents be determined as the legal parents if you're, using a surrogate?
So in states, in most places, particularly places that have legalized surrogacy and are very protective and welcoming to surrogacy, you can go through a process that's called to get a pre-birth order. We often shorten it to a PBO. And what this means is that the attorney that you're working with will file a parentage petition with the court. And that petition will say that the intended parents are the legal parents of the child, that the surrogate has no financial or other responsibilities towards the child, and a judge will basically issue an order that says that confers parental rights onto the parents. Sometimes there is a hearing. In certain states, you actually need to go to court. In some states, you can do it on the papers, which just means that your attorney will file the petition, and then you'll get the order back in the mail. It does work differently in different places, and the really important thing about that order is that it will enable parents to be named automatically on a birth certificate. And that is really important. In states where this process is not available, their parents can go through what is called a step or second parent adoption. And that's a bit of a more involved process. You might have to get some background checks. You might have to have a home visit. But that is the process that's available in places where a PBO process is not. And the other important contingent, especially, since there might be some people listening who are, I don't know if they're dual citizens or, they're planning on moving to another country, but if there is an international component to your arrangement, then an adoption process could be safer, just because it's more likely to be recognized in that other country. And I forgot to mention the PBO is something that's typically filed with the court in the second trimester of a surrogate's pregnancy.
Wow, that's a lot of information. So
yes.
Is that attorney to be able to do it? Can a average person do this on their own, or you have to have an attorney doing this?
So we always recommend that everybody has an attorney. In many states, you are required to have an attorney. And that means for both just the gestational carrier and for the parents. So this process involves two attorneys who will be speaking with each other and negotiating with each other. And as you can see from, what I've just said already, which is I'm throwing a lot of information at you, the laws are different in different states. So that's why it's important to have an attorney. The laws change because these laws about reproductive technology respond to changes in political attitudes, but also to scientific innovation. So it's always important to speak with an attorney. Just right now, we know that the New York law just changed. There's a law in Colorado that's up in the legislature to officially legalize surrogacy in Colorado. And the other reason that it's important to work with attorneys is that there's a lot riding on this process. Intended parents are very invested in having a child through this process. And, surrogates are invested in helping intended parents, but also, they're invested in retaining some kind of autonomy in the process. And so it's very hard to come up with a contract on your own that knows how to balance all of those incredibly important factors. So, there are things that go into these contracts which are long, they're very thorough, things like how the surrogate will be compensated or if she's being compensated, and that can include things like lost wages, and, things, provisions about health insurance and life insurance need to be figured out. And it's particularly important to work with an attorney in order to address very tricky issues, like, what might happen if a pregnancy needs to be terminated. That's very rare, but it's super important to know what would happen if that came to be. So
like what
particularly
was like a
so,
medical something for the surrogate during the process.
you said if a medical emergency.
What would happen?
So that's the whole point of having a contract, right? Is that it
Yeah.
would lay out exactly what would happen. And, every case is different, but of course, the sort of framework is that, everybody would agree in that contract to follow the medical advice of the physician that the gestational carrier chose for herself, that everyone agreed to. And that, that is exactly why it's so important to work with attorneys and to have a contract that is thorough, that is, well negotiated, so that everyone is aware of what the steps that need to be taken if an emergency happens.
And if I can just add to that, 100% everything Rachel said. And I just want to add that it's not just any attorney that you want to retain. You need to retain an attorney who specializes in surrogacy, an assisted reproductive technology attorney, because the regular family law attorney or a general practitioner is not even going to know the standard in the industries and everything that Rachel said that needs to be implemented throughout the entire process. It is a very specialized field. And the last thing that you want is an attorney charging you so much money and looking at a contract and not even understanding what an embryo is, and not looking up on Google what an embryo is. That's not what you want. So you definitely want to have someone who this is their specialty.
That makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you, Rachel. That's really informative.
Sure.
So I want to shift gears a little bit. Obviously, we're the Jewish Fertility Foundation, and we get questions all the time about the Jewish component of various ways to grow your family. I know for me, it was really important when I was seeking an embryo donor that the egg was Jewish, and it's not important for everybody. It was important for me. And let's talk a little bit about Yifat, if you can help answer these questions. But in your understanding, what are requirements of a Jewish surrogate?
So it's interesting because it's not, we have what is a requirement of any surrogate. And then in addition to that, when we have someone who needs to be a Jewish surrogate, then we have all the additional Jewish requirements. So first of all, you need to understand that surrogates, they have to go through medical screening. They have to pass psychological evaluations. They have to have criminal background checks. We even do a credit history check. We do a home study. Home studies are very, very important because we want to make sure that for example, if the surrogate says that she does not smoke, that in fact her home doesn't smell like smoke, that there's no evidence. One time there was an issue where the neighbor was smoking, and even though the surrogate wasn't smoking, there was secondhand smoke, so that had to be disqualified. So they have to be in a certain age group. They have to have a child already. They've had to have a good pregnancy. They cannot be high risk for anything. So we have all of those requirements. And then on top of that, when we have a client who comes to us and says, okay, Jewish surrogacy is important to us. We would like our surrogate to be Jewish as well. And then, we delve into that. So in terms, it's going to depend, every family is different, and it's going to depend on that family and their rabbi as well. So we have some parents who are more lenient, who would just like a surrogate with some type of Jewish heritage, and they're happy with that. And then on the extreme end of things, we need to find a surrogate who is Jewish by maternal descent, who has, like I said, already had a child. Sometimes we have to make sure that we get a Jewish certification from the rabbis saying that she is in fact Jewish, and she's Jewish in accordance to Jewish law, and that the child will be recognized as Jewish in Israel. And then another part of it is that in some instances, and again on the extreme end, that we need to make sure that she also is single under Jewish law. So she has to either be not married to another Jewish person, or not married to a Jewish male, I should say. She has to
I didn't know that.
yeah, she has to be single, but not single in the terms that we use every day, but single under what the Jewish law standards are. So even if she might not be legally married or married under Jewish law, even if she's living with a Jewish man, that under Jewish law can be considered common law marriage. So we just really have to be careful, and it's really going to end up depending on the rabbi that we're dealing with and the family that we're helping. What we find interesting is that the families that need to be the strictest, who, if Jewish surrogacy is really important to them, is actually the single men, who single dads who are trying to have a baby, or the LGBTQ plus community, because if you have a Jewish baby through a Jewish surrogacy and not everything is perfect, we don't meet all the requirements in accordance to the most conservative, or orthodox, I should say, rulings, then there might be a situation where, in order for the baby to be Jewish and to be recognized as so under Israeli law and Jewish law, is that we might have to do what is called a conversion or a minor conversion of the baby. And that gets really tricky when we're dealing with LGBTQ plus community and the single dads, because the Orthodox rabbis are declined to provide assistance. We have been able to get help in that area, but it is very, very difficult. So in their situation, especially if it's an LGBTQ plus member in Israel, then we really need to make sure that we're meeting all the requirements so that there isn't going to be an issue as to the Jewish heritage of their child.
How does a person even start the process of looking for a Jewish surrogate? The whole process is it is.
Right. So I'll tell you, when I started doing this a long time ago, I myself, like I said, went through infertility and had to figure out all the Jewish surrogacy laws out and talk to rabbis. But I had a client come to me and she said to me, she went from agency to agencies and everybody told her that it is impossible, like a needle in a haystack, to find a Jewish carrier. And I don't like to hear the word impossible. And I just didn't believe that. In a world where we are all literally a degree and a half away from anyone. I mean, look at us now doing this Instagram live, and so many people are going to be watching it. And it's just, I really refuse to believe that. And I can tell you, when we started specializing in Jewish surrogacy, we have been very successful in locating surrogates. Yes, it is not this in the same way as we're able to locate other surrogates of other religions and heritages, but we are successful in doing that. And there's a lot that goes into it. We look at synagogues, we look at listservs, we do advertisements, we do Google, we do social media. So if you are working with an agency that really understands how to target the community that you are looking for, then that is going to be exactly what you want to do if that is something very important to you. So you just have to understand the community that you're targeting and how to reach out to that community.
Is it significantly, I mean, surrogacy itself is a huge cost. Is it significantly more expensive to have a Jewish surrogate? What numbers are we talking about?
So I would say the average surrogacy journey can cost anywhere from $100,000 to $120,000, and that includes a lot of different things. When you're looking at a Jewish surrogate, the cost is a little bit higher, but really overall not that much higher, because the surrogate, her compensation tends to be a little bit higher. So you're looking at the surrogate compensation, which can be around $40,000. Then you're looking at the agency fees, which can be anywhere between $25,000. And then really everything else is very similar. So it's going to end up costing you between $120,000 to $150,000. And there's actually a lot of things, if you're working with the right attorney and the right agency, there's a lot of things that you can do that your agency is going to speak to you about in order to properly manage your finances and to properly plan for your surrogacy journey. So you know what you're going to need, and you know when you're going to need it, and where you can potentially cut costs. Like one of the most costly things in the surrogacy process is the insurance. The health insurance can be about $30,000 to $40,000 additional if you need to get private insurance for your carrier. If you don't need private insurance, a lot of the times we're able to, if the surrogate does need insurance, we're able to get insurance through the Affordable Care Act on the open exchange. But if she already has insurance, if you're able to find a surrogate who has insurance, then that's going to substantially reduce your cost substantially. And I have to say now, with the exception of New York, because New York.
Oh, is it breaking up for everybody else or just?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll say, and I don't know if Rachel, you can speak to this, but in general, are you finding with your Jewish, oh, she's coming back a little bit. I'll ask the question and if she's able to answer. But, are you finding that surrogacy within the Jewish community is more accepted than it has been in the past previously? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I definitely think it is. I definitely think that just like, with every other community, infertility is becoming, there's still a stigma around it, but it is becoming less and less. And certainly in communities that are focused on family, like the Jewish community is, infertility it's a tricky issue. Obviously, depending on what denomination you come from, what kind of community you come from, it's different. But I have been so happy to see so many support groups that exist, organizations like your organization, and there are ones that are even geared towards people in particular communities. And I think that that goes a long way. Just starting the conversations with people who have experienced infertility goes a long way to getting rid of the stigma, and then also normalizing things like surrogacy, egg donation. It's, the conversation should not just be about, Kim Kardashian using a surrogate. It's very expensive, but it's something that should feel more like an option for not just celebrities. And so I think that it's there's a lot of hope about the acceptance level.
Well, I appreciate that. Hopefully, as people find out more that this is an option for them, if they're able to afford it or figure out how to finance it, this is something that will really help so many people. So I want to thank you, Rachel, for your time. I think you fell off,
Yeah.
but we appreciate it. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience before we end?
Sure. I just want to kind of leave a message of, like helpfulness. I know that this when you're seeking information about fertility treatments and reproductive technology can be very, very overwhelming, especially surrogacy. There's lots of laws, there's lots of parts of it. If there are things that you have more questions about, feel free to to look me up on my website, and I'm always happy to talk with anybody. Yifat's not here, but I know that that's the same for her. And even if you live in a state where we're not licensed, we're happy to refer you to an attorney who can give you a better sense of the laws and what you might need to be thinking about. But I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to speak to you all today, and hopefully we'll do more of these in the future.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Have a great week, and we will talk to you all soon.
Thanks, Alana. Bye.
Bye.